Okay, Sacrifice '09 is now in the history books, and as you can see from the smile on my face, this pay-per-view was real good. In fact, I'd say that it was better than Lockdown, which I also liked a lot. If you caught the pre-show, you saw a really nice match with Kiyoshi and Amazing Red, and one thing I think is very clear at this point, TNA needs to get behind Amazing Red right now and push him to the moon. This guy's only made like 4 appearances since he's come back, and he's getting really over really fast. And if they book him right, and if they present him right, I think Red could be TNA's answer to Evan Bourne. I really do. As for the pay-per-view itself, we started out with bonus match, X Division 6-man tag, Motor City Machine Guns and Abdul Bashir versus Lethal Consequences and Eric Young. I've read a bunch of reports from critics dismissing this match as just a bunch of moves. Yeah, those critics can kiss my ass. This match was tremendous. It was non-stop action from start to finish. The near falls were awesome. And for all you WWE purist nerds out there, it even told a story, with Eric Young getting frustrated that no one would tag him in, which played right into his current storyline as he continues to move towards a heel turn. I kind of doubt that Eric Young will work as a heel, but they are setting it up very well. This was a great, exciting match. Really got the crowd jacked up. In fact, I think it was a toss-up between this match and Beer Money British Invasion for Best Match of the Night. And speaking of which, 2 things really struck me about that match. Number 1, Robert Roode and James Storm seem really motivated right now. You can just tell by their work lately that they're really excited about what they're doing. I think right now, Robert Roode is doing the best work he's ever done in TNA. And Beer Money, those guys have been on fire these last few months. This is the second pay-per-view in a row where they've had arguably the best match of the night. And they were so over in this match, too. And so were the heels. And that leads me to number 2. The British Invasion had to be the most over heels on this entire pay-per-view. I couldn't believe how much heat they got. And they just debuted as a group a couple weeks ago, and they're already over huge. I had a feeling they were going to get over, but I didn't think they were going to get over this fast. My God. This was Brutus Magnus's best match yet by a mile. I would love to see these 2 teams feud after Beer Money win their belts back. Then we had AJ Styles versus Booker T I Quit match. This was another great one. This was easily Booker T's best match in months. Now, a lot of people seem to be pissed off about the finish with Jenna Maraska throwing the towel in there to stop the match. And while I understand those frustrations, I think people are making too big a deal out of this. Okay, yes, the finish was absolutely retarded. If you weren't going to have someone say I quit, then why have an I quit match at all? It was just idiotic. I'm not saying it wasn't. But did it really change anything? Would the outcome of the match have been that different if Maraska hadn't shown up? They basically sold it like AJ had the match won, and then Booker was like 5 seconds away from saying I quit when Maraska showed up with the towel. So AJ still got put over, which was the most important part. The thing with the towel was stupid as hell, but it wasn't such a big deal that it ruined the match like some people seem to be saying. Knockouts title match, Angelina and Awesome Kong, they had a pretty good bout, and then Angelina actually beat Kong on her own in a way that made sense, and that surprised the hell out of me. Did not expect that at all. The way they've been pushing Kong lately, I thought the only way Angelina was going to leave with the belt was if there was some kind of interference or some lame-ass DQ finish or something like that. But instead, they let Angelina get in enough offense where she didn't look like she got squashed, and then she managed to beat Kong by herself, which was the best thing they could have possibly done to make her look like a credible heel champion. And now, hopefully, they will get Kong out of the title picture for a while and get some new, fresh challengers in there. And not some jobber bolt. Good challengers. Next we had Samoa Joe versus Kevin Nash in a rematch that was months in the making, apparently. I've read some criticisms about this one too. But, hey, come on, you guys. It was a Kevin Nash match. Seriously, what were you expecting out of this? Okay, yeah, it wasn't match of the year or anything, but by the standards of a Kevin Nash match, it was way better than what he usually delivers. And it was an actual match this time too, not some bullcrap 2-minute DQ like Joe and Steiner at Destination X. And Samoa Joe basically beat the shit out of Nash before and after the pin. Finally. Kudos to Nash for putting Joe over like that and doing the right thing for business for a change. And now that Samoa Joe finally got that win back, he can move on to bigger and better things. X Division title match, Daniels versus Suicide. This was not as good as I thought it would be, surprisingly. It wasn't terrible by any means. It was a good match, but something about it did not totally click for some reason, and I'm not sure why. Now, I think part of the problem was the crowd not being into it. I mean, Don West called it perfectly. The audience was split. They didn't know who to cheer for, so they just didn't cheer for anyone, which kind of hurt the match. The finish was, TNA booking 101, unfortunately. I mean, why do an extra 5 minutes when you can just do a normal restart so we can get a clear-cut winner? I think the problem was they were trying to advance the storyline with the machine guns and also keep the belt on Suicide while keeping Daniels looking strong, and the balancing act was just too tough to pull off. Although Don West and his conspiracy theories did make the whole thing a lot more entertaining than it would have been otherwise. I mean, he even mentioned the Curryman thing, which I thought was awesome. But, it just goes back to what I said last week. This was just the wrong time and the wrong place to have Daniels versus Suicide. It was a solid match, hurt by a quiet crowd and a weird finish. I mean, the match itself was good, though. Then we had the main event, Ultimate Sacrifice match, Foley, Sting, Angle, and Jarrett. Thank you, TNA, for finally delivering the goods with a main event match. I expected this to be a good match, but I didn't think it was going to be that good. I mean, even Mick Foley did a great job. I mean, yet granted, he is kind of limited with what he can do physically these days, but he always finds ways to entertain the fans. Like when he sat down and did commentary during the match. He just sat down and started jaw-jacking with Don West for a few minutes. That was hilarious. And then, of course, Kurt Angle comes in and just does a somersault flip over the announce desk. I mean, holy shit. The action was great. It was a very entertaining match. Sting winning was very surprising. Did not expect that to happen. And I'm interested to see what comes out of this now that Sting is the new quote-unquote godfather of the main event mafia. I'm hoping, now that he's the leader, the time has finally come where he won't be able to turn a blind eye to the fact that he's aligned himself with four of the most despicable human beings in pro wrestling. Because all this holier-than-thou BS that Sting has been spewing for months and months on end is really getting old at this point. I mean, what they need to do right now is just have somebody come out, get right in Sting's face, tell him he's the biggest fucking hypocrite on earth, but that's a whole other thing that I could go on about all day. And last but not least, the match that I was dreading about this pay-per-view, Taylor Wilde versus Daphne in a Monsters Ball. Look, first, we need to clear something up. The announcers kept going on and on that this was the first time the Knockouts had ever competed in a match like this. That is not true at all. The Knockouts had plenty of hardcore matches last summer, and that's exactly what this was. It was not a Monsters Ball, it was a regular hardcore match. The only reason they called it a Monsters Ball was because that's Abyss's match, and they needed a way to associate Abyss with this thing so they can intertwine the two storylines. It was a regular hardcore match, not a Monsters Ball. Keeping that in mind, the match was okay while it lasted. I mean, it was acceptable for a typical women's hardcore TV match. It was not even close to a good Monsters Ball. It was only about 3 minutes long, and it was one of those things where the post-match angle was way more important than the match itself. TNA does way too much. Now, the post-match angle was actually pretty good, I thought. I mean, it didn't flop like I expected. The crowd was into it, and they popped for everything they were supposed to pop for. I'm not saying the segment was good. The whole thing was better than I thought it would be, but I thought it was going to be a complete abortion. Not quite good, not quite terrible, so take that for what it's worth. It might seem like I'm being really forgiving of this thing. Trust me, I'm not. Okay? All I'm saying is that as bad as it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, mainly because the post-match angle inexplicably worked when I didn't think it had any right to work. Nevertheless, this was definitely the low point of the pay-per-view, but for me it was the only really low point. Anyway, final verdict. I think Sacrifice was the pay-per-view that Destination X had the potential to be, but wasn't. Both shows had a good card and good build-up going in, but Sacrifice delivered, whereas Destination X was atrocious. Sacrifice was definitely worth my money. I was very satisfied with it. It's too bad that probably nobody ordered it because the Nimrods scheduled it for Memorial Day weekend. So check out the replay if you're one of those many people who missed the pay-per-view due to the holiday. Can't wait for Impact this Thursday. Can't wait to see what the build-up for Slammiversary is going to be. So I'll talk to you guys then. See ya.